Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping into one of the quietest, strangest, and most unexpectedly peaceful rituals in all of human history. For the next 2 hours, we're going to follow the ancient Egyptian mummification journey, the full 70-day path from the first cleansing of the body to the sacred Canopic jars to the final steps of the Egyptian afterlife journey eternal. You'll hear the soft crackle of the hearth, the gentle rhythm of rain, and the slow unfolding of rituals that were never meant to be rushed. Rituals that helped a soul cross the Duat, pass the gates, and reach the field of reeds, where time finally learns to rest. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let your breath soften, and let's begin this 70-day journey the way the ancient priests once did. Slowly, reverently, and with a heart as light as a feather.
Imagine this. You're lying in a dark, quiet room, and the only sound is a soft crackle of a fireplace somewhere just out of sight. The glow is warm, golden, gentle. It doesn't hurry you. It doesn't ask anything from you. It simply exists, like a small guardian of stillness at the edge of your awareness. Tonight, we're not rushing through history. We're drifting through it, the way sand drifts across the desert floor, one grain at a time. So take a slow breath in and let it slip out, as if exhaling a long day from your shoulders. You're safe. You're here. And tonight, we're going to ancient Egypt. Not the dramatic Egypt of movies. No curses, no battles, no roaring crowds beneath temple walls, but the quiet Egypt. The patient Egypt. The Egypt that lived in the echoing corridors of tombs and believed that eternity was not a moment, but an entire journey. A journey that began with one of the slowest, most repetitive, almost boring rituals ever created by human hands, the mummification process. Before we step into that stillness, let's start somewhere familiar to the modern world, the Valley of the Kings, 1922. A dusty corridor, nervous breathing, a British archaeologist named Howard Carter holding a candle in one trembling hand. He breaks a tiny hole through a sealed doorway that has not opened in more than 3,000 years. A man behind him whispers, "Can you see anything?" Carter leans forward and with the faintest awe breathes out, "Yes, wonderful things." But tonight, you and I are not here for the glittering gold or the treasures or even the famous golden mask of King Tutankhamun. Those wonderful things are not what we chase. Instead, we're following something quieter, something slower, something far more meditative. The long, methodical, gently repetitive mummification process that made those treasures meaningful in the first place. As your head sinks deeper into your pillow, let your mind drift past Carter, past the crates of artifacts, past the museum lights of the modern world. Let us walk backward through time into a quiet room where a body has just been carried in, a room where the living step aside and the embalmers step forward. Because before there was a golden mask, there was a face. Before there was a tomb, there was a body. And before that body could rest for eternity, the Egyptians believed it had to be prepared with one of the most carefully structured rituals in the world. The mummification process wasn't fast. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't exciting. In fact, it was 70 long days of waiting, drying, wrapping, anointing, and doing the same motions again and again. Motions so predictable, so rhythmically boring that they became almost peaceful. Think about how many modern people find comfort in repetition, making the same cup of tea every night, folding blankets the same way, lighting the same scent of candle. The ancient Egyptians had their own version of that soothing rhythm, except theirs was done for the dead, so the soul could safely enter the afterlife. Tonight, that rhythm is your companion. In this moment, imagine a cool stone chamber lit by flickering oil lamps. The air smells of incense and natron. Outside, the Nile continues flowing, calm, indifferent, eternal. Inside, everything slows. Time stretches. The body is laid upon a wooden table. Voices fall silent. Breaths grow softer. The embalmers approach, carrying tools they have used so many times that their hands move with quiet confidence. Nothing dramatic happens. No chaos. No rush. The mummification process begins the way all peaceful routines begin, with stillness, with intention, with a kind of sacred boredom that feels strangely soothing. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let the beginning of this 70-day ritual feel like a soft dimming of the world around you, a slowing, a calming, a gentle return to the idea that eternity, like sleep, arrives slowly and only when we surrender to the quiet. We're only at the threshold of the story, but already the silence is settling around us like linen cloth, layer by layer, breath by breath, step by step.
As you settle deeper into the quiet of this night, imagine the room around you fading into darkness, warm, soft darkness, the kind that feels like a blanket drawn gently over your thoughts. In ancient Egypt, this was the kind of darkness the embalmers worked in, lit only by lamps whose flames flickered like slow, steady breathing. The mummification process, even in its earliest moments, was not about movement, but about waiting, about letting time stretch, soften, and sink into itself. And so we continue drifting back through those quiet halls of memory to the very beginning of the 70-day ritual. The body has been brought into the chamber, wrapped loosely in cloth for modesty, not yet prepared, not yet touched by the hands of eternity. The embalmers gather around it not as mourners, but as caretakers who know that what they are about to begin will require patience beyond what most people today ever practice. This, too, is part of the mummification process, the acceptance that transformation takes time. In our modern world, everything moves fast. Notifications, alarms, deadlines. But in this chamber, the air itself refuses to hurry. There is no rush because the Egyptians believed that the journey to the afterlife was too important to be done in haste. And so they waited. They let silence speak. They let the first day simply be. One of the embalmers steps forward. Before any tools are touched, before any oils are warmed, before any linen is woven into sacred layers, a simple act begins. Cleansing, not of the body, not yet, but of the space. The lamps are adjusted, the floor is swept, and incense is lit in slow spirals, rising in thin ribbons toward the ceiling as if carrying whispered prayers. You can almost smell it now. Sweet, earthy, comforting. The scent marks the beginning of something ancient, something sacred, something that has been repeated so many times that the very air seems to remember the rhythm. And this rhythm is the heart of the mummification process. The embalmers believed that each motion, each breath, each pause became part of the blessing. Nothing was rushed, nothing was careless. As your breathing slows, imagine their hands, steady, calm, practiced, moving not with urgency, but with reverence. One of them adjusts the cloth over the body, smoothing out a fold that no one else would have noticed. Another checks the natron salt stored in clay jars along the chamber wall, making sure they are dry and ready for the long days of preservation ahead. A third prepares the oils whose scents were believed to soothe not only the body, but the soul. The room fills with soft sounds, the scrape of clay lids, the rustle of linen, the muted steps of sandaled feet brushing against smooth stone. Nothing sharp, nothing loud. Everything is softened by the stillness of the chamber. This is the world the Egyptians created on purpose, a world where silence could do its ancient work. And within that silence, the mummification process becomes something more than a ritual. It becomes a meditation, a slow devotion to time itself. Tonight, as you listen, let that same devotion wrap around your thoughts. Imagine 70 days unfolding like the pages of a very old book, slow, deliberate, each page turned with care. The first day is almost uneventful by design. The Egyptians didn't believe the beginning needed drama. They believed it needed steadiness. The embalmers stand quietly, acknowledging the journey that is about to begin. Their presence alone is a prayer. Outside, the Nile glints under moonlight, and a breeze whispers through reeds that have grown along its banks for thousands of years. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird calls once, then disappears into silence again. Inside, the first night of the ritual comes to a close in perfect stillness. The embalmers extinguish the lamps one by one, allowing the chamber to fall back into dark, warm quiet. And as the darkness deepens, the body rests, not yet preserved, not yet transformed, but accepted into the slow embrace of time. Tonight, allow yourself to rest in that same embrace. You are not in a hurry. You do not need to become anything yet. Like the beginning of the mummification process, this moment is simply preparation, a gentle, sacred pause before the true journey begins.
As the chamber settles into its first full night of silence, imagine time itself beginning to stretch out like a long, unbroken ribbon. In this ancient place, moments do not tick forward the way they do in our modern world. They flow, slowly and quietly, like the Nile under moonlight. Tonight, you and I remain in that chamber, not to witness action, but to witness stillness. Because for the Egyptians, the beginning of the mummification process was not marked by a single dramatic gesture, but by a shift in the air. A collective understanding that the body before them had stepped out of the world of breath and into the world of eternity. And eternity, they believed, begins gently. The embalmers sit on low stools along the wall, letting their eyes adjust to the darkness. They are not rushed. They are not impatient. They have done this hundreds of times, and they know nothing about the mummification process is meant to be hurried. Time is an ingredient as essential as the natron, the oils, the linen. So they wait. They breathe. They allow night to settle into their bones like cool sand. Outside the chamber, life continues in its ordinary rhythm. Traders finish their day at the market. Families gather around small clay lamps. Fishermen mend their nets under the fading sky. The city of Thebes hums with distant sounds that never quite reach the chamber, but somehow make its quiet even deeper. And yet in this quiet, something important is happening, not to the body, but to the people around it. They are preparing themselves. The mummification process demanded not only physical skill, but mental stillness. Before they touched the body, the embalmers had to empty themselves of everyday thoughts, worries about crops, frustrations with neighbors, the ache in their shoulders after a long day. They had to leave all of that outside. In this chamber, their minds must become as calm as the oils they would later pour, as steady as the linen they would wrap layer by layer. This mental preparation is something we rarely talk about when we think of ancient Egypt. We think of pyramids, pharaohs, treasures, curses, but not the quiet discipline of the embalmers whose lives were shaped by slow ritual. Their work required a kind of patience we hardly practice anymore. As you listen, imagine sitting beside them. Your hands rest on your lap. Your breathing slows to match theirs. The chamber is dim, but not frightening. It is sacred, warm, familiar in its rhythm. One of the embalmers leans back slightly, closing his eyes. Perhaps he thinks of the desert wind outside. Perhaps he thinks of his family asleep at home. Or perhaps he thinks of nothing at all. That nothingness, that inner stillness, is exactly what the ritual asks of him. Across the chamber, another embalmer reaches for a small clay bowl. Inside is water drawn from the Nile earlier that morning, water believed to hold purity, memory, and the quiet power of the river that had shaped their civilization. He runs his fingers across the rim of the bowl, not to use it yet, but to feel its coolness, to acknowledge that purification will soon begin. In that small gesture, the mummification process deepens, not in action, but in intention. The Egyptians believed that before a body could be prepared for eternity, the space around it had to learn to breathe. Slowly, softly, like a lullaby hummed by the earth itself. The lamps flicker again. A shadow moves across the ceiling, long and delicate. Someone adjusts a jar, and the faint sound of clay tapping stone echoes like a heartbeat. The chamber is alive, but alive in a quiet way, a way that feels almost like sleep. And this is the strange beauty of the mummification process. Though it deals with death, it feels more like preparing for a long rest, a rest that lasts not a night, not a year, but forever. As the embalmers rise from their stools, stretching their limbs after their time in the stillness, the mood changes slightly, not louder, not faster, but more focused. They gather their tools, bronze hooks, obsidian blades, carefully woven linen strips. They do not use them yet, but the act of setting them out signals that the ritual is waking from its first quiet night. And you, drifting deeper into the softness of your own night, can feel that same shift, the sense that a journey has begun not with noise, but with intention. The embalmers whisper a short prayer. It is not a plea, not a cry, but a greeting to the soul that has stepped into the first stage of eternity. Their words fade into the air like warm breath on cold glass. Outside, the last lights of Thebes extinguish one by one, and silence returns to the desert. Inside, the mummification process prepares to unfold, slowly, gently, like a story whispered across 70 long, peaceful days.
The second chapter of our journey begins not with a tool, not with a blade, but with water. Gentle, flowing, patient water. In ancient Egypt, the first and longest stage of the mummification process was purification, a ritual that lasted 40 quiet days. Tonight, as you rest, imagine the soft sound of water trickling over stone, the distant call of small birds beginning their morning song, and the cool, sacred calm that settles inside the chamber as the embalmers prepare for this essential phase. Purification was not simply cleaning, it was a spiritual unbinding. The Egyptians believed that before the soul could begin its 70-day journey toward eternity, the body had to be washed free of the dust of the world, its burdens, its memories, its lingering ties to breath. And so 40 days passed in a rhythm as gentle as your own breathing, each day repeating the same soft ritual. The body was laid upon a tilted wooden board so that water and natron could flow downward, carrying impurities away. The purification ritual, 70 days, began here, with the first touch of water drawn from the Nile, cooled overnight, then warmed slightly by lamps so it felt neither sharp nor jarring, but comfortingly alive. One embalmer would pour, slowly, letting the water form thin streams that glimmered in the lamplight like threads of silver. Another would use linen cloths to guide the flow, not scrubbing, not forcing, only guiding, the way a parent might brush dust from a child's cheek. Every movement had intention, every intention had meaning. As you picture this, let your own breath soften. Notice how nothing in this ritual is rushed. The Egyptians believed that the body was a temporary home of the soul, and that when breath left it, the body needed gentleness, not urgency. It needed to be cradled into silence. The sound of water created a soothing echo in the chamber. The dripping formed a rhythm, slow and steady. Sometimes it fell in intervals, one drop, then another, then a pause, like the heartbeat of a sleeping world. The purification ritual, 70 days, was a ritual of return, returning the body to stillness so that the soul could travel freely. And tonight, as you lie there, drifting deeper into calm, imagine the embalmers moving in practiced harmony. Their steps are soft, their gestures are slow, their breath aligns with the quiet music of the water. Outside, the world continues to move, markets open, the sun climbs the sky, fishermen push their boats into the river,
But inside the chamber, time folds into itself. Nothing matters except the slow washing of the body and the even slower release of the soul. As the embalmers work, they whisper words not meant to be heard, only felt. Words that acknowledge the mystery of transformation. The body must be purified, so the soul may return. These murmured blessings linger in the warm air like incense, drifting upward and dissolving into the shadows above. And with each gentle pour of water, the body becomes lighter, less tied to the world it once belonged to. The Egyptians believed that impurities were not merely physical, they were emotional, spiritual, energetic. They thought the body carried echoes of fear, echoes of joy, echoes of unfinished days. The purification ritual washed these away, drop by drop, until the vessel felt clean enough for a soul to find its way back, even for a final farewell. Tonight, imagine the embalmers preparing fresh natron, the mineral that will slowly draw every last trace of moisture from the body over the coming weeks. They do not use it yet, but its presence reminds them, and us, that transformation is slow. 40 days of purification, 70 days in total. Why so long? Why stretch the ritual across weeks that seem to drift endlessly? You may be wondering, and that question is part of the mystery. The Egyptians believed time itself was sacred, and you will soon discover why this ritual needed 70 days. But for now, we remain in these first moments, listening to water fall like tiny pieces of eternity, soft and unhurried.
If you listen closely, very closely, you can almost hear the sound that shaped the next 40 days. The whisper of water against stone. Not rushing water, not forceful water, but gentle, patient, deliberate water. In ancient Egypt, the purification ritual, 70 days, continued each sunrise with the same quiet devotion. The embalmers would return to the chamber, their movements slow from the heat of the desert morning, their breath steady as they prepared once more to cleanse the body. Day after day, the ritual unfolded like a long, unbroken dream. There was no hurry. There was no final deadline. Only rhythm, only intention, only the soft, repetitive embrace of water. The body, once warm with life, now rested in a state between worlds, and the Egyptians believed that this in-between stage was sacred. The embalmers approached it the way a monk approaches meditation, not to conquer it, but to sit beside it. Every morning began with the lighting of lamps. Their flames flickered softly along the walls, casting long shadows that drifted across the linen-covered form. The first sounds were always the same: the quiet rustle of linen, the scrape of clay jars being moved across stone, the faint drip of condensation forming in the cool corners of the chamber. And then, water. Always water. One embalmer would cup his hands beneath a bowl and release a thin stream over the chest, then the arms, then the legs. Another would dab natron water along the joints, purifying the places where movement once lived, the elbows, the knees, the wrists. To the Egyptians, these joints held not just mobility, but memory, the memory of walking, of working, of touching loved ones. And so, purification required tenderness.
As you imagine these motions, let yourself slow down. Imagine the air in the chamber cooling your thoughts. Imagine the touch of water as something that cleans not the skin, but the remnants of long days, long years. The embalmers spoke very little, but when they did, it was always in whispers, gentle phrases carried like feathers on the air. May the waters of the Nile cleanse you. May your path be opened. May your soul find its way. Their voices never rose. They never broke the stillness. This was a time for respect, for patience, for quiet companionship with the dead. Outside the chamber, the world continued to spin. Children chased one another through sunlit courtyards. Women baked bread at dawn, the smell drifting down alleyways. Merchants arranged jars of honey, figs, and oils in the markets. But inside these stone walls, time was different, slower, denser, as if each minute carried the weight of memory. The purification ritual, 70 days, was not about washing the body once. It was about surrender, letting the old world release its hold. And so each day the embalmers would gently tilt the board, allowing the water to glide downward, carrying away the invisible threads that tied the body to the life it once lived. The sound of dripping became a kind of meditation. The chamber echoed softly with the small music of droplets falling onto clay bowls placed beneath the board. Plink. Pause. Plink. It was a lullaby made of water and time. Sometimes the embalmers would open the shutters just slightly to let in a breath of desert morning air. When they did, you could hear faint bird song, the flutter of wings, the distant call of storks resting near the riverbanks. These sounds reminded the embalmers that life continued, even as they tended to death. That the world was in constant motion, even as they moved through ritual stillness. On the 20th day, the body had already changed. The water had softened what needed softening, the natron had begun to prepare what needed to be preserved. But the most profound transformation was invisible. It was the slow unthreading between the soul and the vessel. The Egyptians believed the soul moved gradually, not instantly. And so the embalmers continued their gentle work, acknowledging that the departure of a soul is like the departure of the sun, slow, glowing, unhurried. As you lie here listening, your breath becoming quieter, your thoughts slower, imagine standing at the edge of this chamber. Imagine watching droplets slide across skin that no longer feels, but still deserves tenderness. Imagine understanding why the Egyptians believed purification required 40 days. Because transformation, true transformation, takes time. And because the soul, they believed, needed a long goodbye. Tomorrow, the embalmers will return again, and the water will fall again, and the silence will deepen. For now, the chamber rests in the soft music of purification, waiting for the next sunrise.
By the time the 30th day arrived, the chamber felt less like a room and more like a world within a world. A place where time drifted instead of passed, where silence breathed instead of lingered. The mummification process was only halfway through its purification stage, yet the embalmers had already settled into a rhythm so steady, so patient, that each movement felt like a prayer carried by muscle memory.
Imagine this. The lamps glow with a dim amber light, the kind that softens everything it touches. The water bowls arranged along the stone floor gleam like small moons. And the air is warm, not hot, not heavy, but warm in the way ancient rooms often are, filled with the breath of centuries. Each morning begins the same way. One embalmer lights the incense. Another opens the linen covering the body. A third adjusts the tilt of the board, ensuring that the flow of Natron water will follow its slow path downward. No one hurries. No one breaks the rhythm. The sound of water returns again, not a stream, but a whisper, a soft ribbon of liquid tracing its way across still flesh. The Egyptian purification ritual, 70 days, required this repetition because the Egyptians believed that purity was not a single act. It was a slow becoming, a gradual shedding of the earthly world, like sand slipping through fingers. The body responds to the ritual. It changes shape subtly. The swelling softens. The skin begins to tighten. The scent of natron mingles with oils of cedar, myrrh, and sweet desert resins, creating an aroma that is strangely comforting, almost like standing beside an ancient tree after rain. Outside the chamber, life continues in full color. Children laugh, traders shout, goats bleat, fishermen drag their nets ashore. But none of those sounds enter this room of stillness. Here the world feels muted, wrapped in linen just like the body itself. By the 35th day, something profound happens, though it is not visible. It happens inside the minds of the embalmers. Weeks of silence, rhythm, and devotion create a calm so deep that the chamber feels like a shared heartbeat. Their thoughts slow. Their gestures soften in ways even they do not notice. They are no longer simply working. They are accompanying the soul, not rushing it, not pulling it back, just walking beside it quietly as it prepares to move on. And in this deep stillness, a question floats through the air like dust in lamplight. Why 70 days? Why not 7? Why not 3? The Egyptians believed that transformation was a delicate journey. They believed the soul hovered, watched, remembered, and gradually loosened its hold on the world. That process, they said, took 40 days of purification, 40 days for the body to forget its weight, 40 days for the spirit to feel unburdened enough to move freely. Only after the body was fully purified could the next phases begin. Only then could preservation truly start. The water pours again, slow, careful, steady. Droplets run along the skin like tiny trails of moonlight. The embalmers wipe gently, mindful of every curve, every joint, every silent place where life once lived. They tilt the board just slightly, allowing the water to carry away everything the body no longer needs. The dripping forms a soft pattern on the ground. Drip, breath, silence. Drip, breath, silence. The chamber seems to sway with it, as if the room itself is listening to the rhythm. By the 40th day, the body has entered a new stillness, a deep, settled calm that even the embalmers feel. When they look at the linen-covered form, they see not death, but transition, not an ending, but a door slowly opening. This is what purification means in the mummification process, the slow unbinding of the soul from the world. As you lie here listening, your breath quiet and your thoughts drifting like desert wind, imagine standing in the doorway of that chamber. Imagine hearing the last droplets of the 40th morning fall onto stone, a whisper marking the end of purification. Tomorrow the transformation will enter its next phase. But tonight the chamber rests. The water bowls glimmer softly, the lamps dim, and the silence of 40 days settles like a final blessing.
The third chapter of our quiet journey begins with something that might sound frightening at first, but in the hands of the ancient embalmers, it was gentle, deliberate, and filled with reverence. Tonight, we enter the stage known as evisceration, the careful removal and preservation of the internal organs. But let your breath stay slow. Let your shoulders remain soft, because in ancient Egypt, even this process, the Egyptian evisceration ritual, was performed with a slowness and tenderness meant to honor the soul, not disturb it. Imagine the chamber in the moments just before dawn. A soft breeze moves through a narrow window carved high in the stone. The faint sound of traditional Egyptian instruments, low flutes, gentle harp-like strings, seems to drift in from far away, though no musicians are present. It's the type of music your mind imagines when it rests deeply. The lamps glow faintly. Dust moves through the golden light like tiny drifting stars. And at the center of the room lies the body, already purified for 40 days, already quiet in a way that feels older than time. The embalmers step closer, not hurriedly, but with the slow, steady rhythm that has guided every moment of the mummification process so far. The third chapter of our quiet journey begins with something that might sound frightening at first, but in the hands of the ancient embalmers, it was gentle, deliberate, and filled with reverence. Tonight we enter the stage known as evisceration, the careful removal and preservation of the internal organs. But let your breath stay slow. Let your shoulders remain soft, because in ancient Egypt,
even this process, the Egyptian evisceration ritual, was performed with a slowness and tenderness meant to honor the soul, not disturb it. Imagine the chamber in the moments just before dawn. A soft breeze moves through a narrow window carved high in the stone. The faint sound of traditional Egyptian instruments, low flutes, gentle harp-like strings, seems to drift in from far away, though no musicians are present. It's the type of music your mind imagines when it rests deeply. The lamps glow faintly. Dust moves through the golden light like tiny drifting stars. And at the center of the room lies the body, already purified for 40 days, already quiet in a way that feels older than time. The embalmers step closer, not hurriedly, but with the slow, steady rhythm that has guided every moment of the mummification process so far. In their belief system, the internal organs held the memory of life, the warmth of breath, the fire of digestion, the currents of emotion. To help the soul travel, these organs could not simply remain inside the body. They had to be cared for separately, each one placed into what you may know as canopic jars. But before we reach those jars, we begin with intention. One embalmer, often the most experienced, places his hand lightly on the chest, not pressing, just acknowledging the vessel before him. He whispers a few words in a voice nearly swallowed by the wind. May your journey be open. May your essence remain whole. These blessings were part of the Egyptian evisceration ritual, spoken not to frighten away spirits, but to guide them gently. The chamber grows still. Outside, the wind brushes against the stone walls like a sigh. Inside, the embalmers prepare for the next step. They do not rush, they do not force. Their movements are slow, almost rhythmic, like waves brushing the shore. In this stage, one small incision is made, just enough to begin the long process of removing the organs. But the embalmers do this in silence, with gratitude, understanding that they are touching what once kept a person alive. And though the word evisceration may sound clinical, harsh, or even unsettling, the Egyptians approached it with extraordinary gentleness. No sudden motions, no harsh sounds, only slow breaths, soft footsteps, and the whisper of wind weaving between the stones. When the first organ is removed, it is not discarded. It is placed onto a linen-covered table, where another embalmer, working with the same patience as the Nile itself, begins to wash it carefully with palm wine and natron. The water glistens on its surface, then drips into a clay bowl with a sound so soft it feels like sleep itself. The Egyptian evisceration ritual was slow, intentional, almost meditative. And at the edge of the chamber, 4 canopic jars await. They are carved from alabaster that glows like captured moonlight. Each jar bears the head of a protective deity, the 4 sons of Horus, who will guard the organs until eternity. Hapi with the head of a baboon. Duamutef with the head of a jackal. Kibesenwef with the head of a falcon. Imseti with the head of a human. But for now, the jars remain empty, silently watching, as if waiting for the next part of the ritual. The embalmers continue their quiet work, and as they do, the room fills with something unexpected: peace. The kind of peace that comes from repetition, from purpose, from knowing that every gesture, however small, carries meaning. Outside, dawn touches the sky in soft pink hues. Inside, the Egyptian evisceration ritual begins its gentle unfolding. And as you listen, let that unfolding guide your own breath, slow, steady, peaceful, as if you too are being carried by the calm rhythm of ancient hands.
By the time the second organ is removed, the chamber has settled into a rhythm so quiet, so perfectly balanced, that it feels less like a room and more like a sanctuary, suspended between breath and silence. The Egyptian evisceration ritual was never meant to be hurried, never meant to shock or disturb. Instead, it unfolded slowly, like sand shifting beneath moonlight. Each movement was small, each gesture was deliberate, and each step was performed with the deep understanding that they were guiding a soul toward eternity. In the dim glow of the oil lamps, the embalmers place the next organ onto a clean sheet of linen. The scent of palm wine rises softly as it is washed, a scent sweet and earthy, like the breath of the desert after a rare rainfall. Water drips again, slow, patient, calm. The droplets fall into a clay bowl, and the bowl answers with a soft, rounded echo. Not loud, not sharp, just enough to remind you that time is still moving, even if every second feels stretched, softened, slowed. At the far end of the chamber, the 4 canopic jars continue to wait. They are carved with such care that even in the softest light, their faces seem alive. The first, with the human head, belongs to Imseti. He protects the liver, the organ the Egyptians believed held the warmth of life. The second, with the baboon head, belongs to Hapi. He guards the lungs, the breath, the wind of existence. The third is Duamutef, with the head of a jackal, protector of the stomach. And the fourth, Kebesenuef, with the falcon's proud gaze, watches over the intestines. These 4 guardians, the 4 sons of Horus, stand silently, each one facing slightly different directions, as if watching over the 4 corners of the world. They are not frightening figures, they are protectors, companions, ancient sentinels whose only purpose is to guide and safeguard. As the embalmers continue the Egyptian evisceration ritual, they whisper short invocations, not prayers for the living, but blessings for the journey. Soft enough to be carried away by the smallest breeze, they say things like, Imseti, guard the warmth; Hapi, guard the breath;
Duamutef, guard the nourishment. Kebesenuef, guard the path. Their voices never rise. They do not chant. They do not dramatize. Each word is spoken gently, carefully, as if speaking too loudly might disturb the calm that has filled the room. In some moments, the only sound is the desert wind brushing against the stone outside, just a sigh, nothing more, a reminder of how large the world is and how small this chamber feels in comparison. And yet, inside these quiet walls, something sacred is happening. The organs, once warm and living, now still but honored, are being prepared for their eternal guardians. As the embalmers finish cleaning the third organ, they begin to rub it gently with natron and fragrant oils. The aroma of cedar wood rises softly, warm and soothing, blending with the faint perfume of myrrh. The smell fills the chamber like a slow-spreading calm, a scent that feels ancient, even if you have never smelled it before. It is the scent of preservation, the scent of time being slowed down, the scent of the Egyptian evisceration ritual as it has been practiced for thousands of years. As each organ is prepared, the embalmers lift it with steady hands, never rushed, never careless, and place it into the canopic jar chosen for it. The liver into Imseti, the lungs into Hapi, the stomach into Duamutef, the intestines into Kebesenuef. With each placement, there is a subtle moment of stillness, a pause, almost like the room itself is acknowledging the weight of what has been done. Outside, the sky slowly brightens. A thin band of gold creeps across the horizon. But inside, nothing changes. The lamps flicker softly. The wind sighs against the walls, and the canopic jars now hold the memories of a life, protected, watched over, cherished. The Egyptian evisceration ritual continues with the same slow pulse it began with, steady as a heartbeat. And as you listen, let that pulse guide you into an even deeper calm, as if the guardians themselves are watching over your rest tonight.
When the final organ is placed into its canopic jar, something in the chamber shifts. Not loudly, not visibly, but gently, like a curtain of stillness settling into its rightful place. The Egyptian evisceration ritual has reached its quiet climax. The 4 canopic jars now stand complete, no longer waiting, no longer empty, but filled with the preserved memories of a human life. The transformation is subtle. The air feels heavier, yet softer. The lamps flicker, as if acknowledging that a major step of the mummification process has been completed. And though no words are spoken, the room feels different now, more grounded, more certain, as if the space itself understands what has just taken place. When the final organ is placed into its canopic jar, something in the chamber shifts. Not loudly, not visibly, but gently, like a curtain of stillness settling into its rightful place. The Egyptian evisceration ritual has reached its quiet climax. The 4 canopic jars now stand complete, no longer waiting, no longer empty, but filled with the preserved memories of a human life.
The transformation is subtle. The air feels heavier, yet softer. The lamps flicker as if acknowledging that a major step of the mummification process has been completed. And though no words are spoken, the room feels different now, more grounded, more certain, as if the space itself understands what has just taken place. The embalmers step aside for a moment, taking slow, synchronized breaths. Over decades, centuries, this part of the ritual has always required a pause, a breath, a moment to let the transition settle. Imagine standing at the edge of the chamber now. The wind outside has softened to a faint hum, brushing the walls with the gentleness of a lullaby. The traditional Egyptian instruments you imagined earlier, flutes, lyres, harps, return as a quiet echo in your mind. Not loud, not bright, just a soft reminder of how ancient this moment truly is. The embalmers approach the canopic jars and inspect each one. They do not touch them, they simply look, acknowledging the guardians inside. Imseti, with his calm, human face, protecting the liver. Hapi, the baboon-headed guardian of breath. Duamutef, the jackal-headed protector of nourishment. Koibisenuef, the falcon guardian of the path. The four sons of Horus stand in silent formation, each one carved centuries ago with a purpose so simple, yet so profound, to protect what made a person whole. And now, as part of the Egyptian evisceration ritual, their duty has officially begun. The embalmers then turn back to the body, now lighter, emptier, more still than before. But this emptiness is not hollow. In ancient Egypt, emptiness meant readiness, a clearing of the vessel, the beginning of a long preservation. The mummification process required the body to become a quiet container, a sacred shell that could last through centuries, millennia, even eternity. As the embalmers adjust the linen, you might imagine the faint rustle of cloth, a sound so soft it blends with the whisper of the desert wind. They tilt the body slightly, checking the incision, not to hurry, but to ensure harmony. Everything in this ritual is about harmony, balance, continuity. Outside the chamber, the desert sky shifts from pale gold to deeper amber. The sun is rising, but inside, time barely moves. The embalmers begin sealing the small incision with warm resins, thick, amber-colored, smelling faintly of honey and distant forests. The scent rises slowly into the air, mixing with cedar and myrrh. It fills the room with warmth, with calm, with a sweetness that feels almost like reassurance. And with each drop of resin, the room seems to exhale. The Egyptian evisceration ritual is nearly complete, but the embalmers do not rush the final steps. They move with the same deliberate grace they have carried since the beginning. Slow gestures, steady breaths, soft determination. Once the incision is sealed, the body is cleaned again with gentle cloths soaked in Natron water. The embalmers wipe every surface with care, as though smoothing the edges of a dream. The canopic jars gleam faintly, their alabaster sides catching the lamplight. Protected, filled, watching. When the cleaning is finished, the embalmers bow their heads, not deeply, not ceremonially, but with a quiet acknowledgement of the soul they have served. Outside, the wind sighs. Inside, the lamps flicker. And the mummification process enters a new stillness, preparing for the next sacred phase. As you listen, breathe slowly. Let the calm of this ancient ritual wrap around you like linen, soft, warm, timeless. Tonight, the 4 sons of Horus stand guard, and they will not leave their watch.
The 4th chapter of our long, quiet journey begins with a powder that shaped an entire civilization's understanding of preservation, Natron. It is a word that feels ancient, even as it passes through your mind, soft and grainy like mineral dust drifting across the surface of time. Tonight, we step into the phase known as natron salt mummification drying, the moment when the body is slowly transformed from something temporary into something meant to endure centuries, even millennia. Imagine the chamber now. The organs have been placed into their canopic jars. The incision has been sealed with warm resin. The air carries the subtle scent of cedar and myrrh. But beneath those scents, another aroma begins to emerge, the dry, mineral sharpness of natron. Natron is not just salt. It is a natural blend of sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate, sodium chloride, and sodium sulfate. In the heat of the Egyptian desert, natron formed in dry lake beds when the water evaporated under the relentless sun. For the ancient Egyptians, natron was more than a chemical compound. It was a quiet miracle, a cleanser, a purifier. And during the mummification process, natron became a bridge between worlds. As the embalmers approach, they move slowly, carrying baskets filled with pale white natron salt. The grains catch the lamplight, sparkling like tiny stars trapped inside crystal. You can almost hear the sound they make, soft, gentle, like sand slipping through fingers. The Egyptian belief was simple. The body needed to be dried completely, not partially, but fully, so that time could no longer touch it. And the way to achieve this was through natron. The natron salt mummification drying process would last 40 days. 40 days of stillness, of silence, of gentle transformation. The embalmers lift the body slightly and begin to pack natron into every curve, every hollow, every quiet space where moisture might remain. The sound is barely audible, just a faint crunch as natron meets skin. It is not a harsh sound. Nothing in this ritual is harsh. Instead, it feels like listening to the first grains of sand falling at the start of an hourglass. One by one, the baskets are emptied. Natron is poured over the body like snowfall, dry, cold at first touch, but warming slowly with the heat of the room. Little by little, the body disappears beneath the white mineral. The embalmers know that natron will draw out moisture the way the desert draws water from the Nile's edges, slowly, patiently, precisely. Over the next 40 days, this natron salt will work its quiet magic. It will prevent decay not by force, but by removal. Removing water, removing softness, removing the vulnerability of flesh. And just as modern food preservation uses salt, cold, dehydration, or vacuum sealing,
This ancient method worked in the same way, a bridge across thousands of years, technology changing, principles remaining the same. As you imagine natron enveloping the body, imagine too the sound of desert sand shifting under the night sky, soft, rhythmic, eternal. The embalmers do not speak during this step. Their breaths are slow, their hands move with practiced gentleness. Natron falls like a dry rain, burying the body in a quiet embrace. Outside, the desert wind brushes against the walls, another kind of whisper, another kind of drying. Inside, the natron salt mummification drying process begins a long meditation of its own. And as you breathe, let your thoughts slow with it. Let natron become not just a mineral, but a symbol of release, of letting go, of becoming lighter, of becoming something meant to last.
As the days unfold, slowly, gently, one after another, the natron salt mummification drying process begins to change. As the days unfold, slowly, gently, one after another, the natron salt mummification drying process begins to change not just the body, but the very atmosphere of the chamber. The air grows crisper, cleaner, almost lighter, as if the natron itself is purifying everything it touches. In the first few days, the embalmers return quietly at sunrise. They move with the same calm rhythm they have carried since the beginning of the mummification process. Their hands brush over the natron, checking how the grains settle, how they darken as moisture is drawn out. Natron is patient. It does not rush the drying. It does not force transformation. Instead, it works the way deserts work, silently, steadily, reshaping without ever raising its voice. Imagine the body resting beneath the pale mineral, completely covered, hidden, yet cared for. In this stillness, natron behaves like time itself, present but invisible, shaping everything without being seen. Sometimes the embalmers listen closely, leaning their heads slightly as if listening for a whisper beneath the natron. And in the silence, they hear it, a soft, settling sound, like sand shifting in a distant dune. This is the sound of moisture leaving the body, the sound of natron doing exactly what it has done for thousands of years. In many ways, the process resembles something deeply modern. Just as we preserve food today using salt, dehydration, low temperature, or airtight containers, the Egyptians used natron to preserve the body for eternity. Technology evolves, but principles return over and over across time. And so, the natron salt mummification drying cycle becomes a bridge between the ancient world and our own. As the days continue, the embalmers occasionally adjust the natron. They brush away clumps, redistribute grains, refresh areas where moisture has darkened the minerals. Each movement is gentle. Each gesture is slow, almost meditative.
The sound of natron being shifted is soft, like tiny grains of glass flowing through a narrow passage. Outside, the desert wind hums against the stone walls, just a faint, airy vibration. Inside, the chamber remains cool and still. The lamps burn low. Shadows move gently along the walls like drifting fabric. The body, though unseen, changes steadily beneath the natron. Water leaves quietly, drawn out grain by grain. The skin tightens, the soft tissues shrink, but nothing feels harsh, nothing feels frightening. The Egyptians understood that transformation required gentleness, that preservation came not from force, but from patience. By the 20th day, the embalmers notice subtle differences. When they lift a handful of natron near the chest, the grains feel warmer, evidence of moisture being absorbed. They replace that section with fresh natron salt, spreading it evenly with slow, sweeping motions. They do not speak unless absolutely necessary, and when they do, it is in whispers. The natron is working. The dryness is settling. The body is becoming light. Their words are not instructions, they are observations, acknowledgments of what the natron is silently creating. By the 30th day, the transformation has deepened. The body beneath the natron feels firmer, lighter, almost hollowed out in a peaceful way. The embalmers shift the natron again, listening to the faint crunch beneath their hands. The sound is always soft, always rhythmic, almost like a lullaby written in grains of salt. Natron, natron salt, natron mummification. These words echo softly through the chamber, carried not by speech, but by intention. The process continues, slow and steady. Outside, the wind changes direction. Birds pass overhead, but inside, nothing interrupts the long meditation of natron, as the natron salt mummification drying cycle reaches its final days. If you listen closely now, you might almost hear it too, the whisper of natron doing its ancient work, unchanged across thousands of years.
By the time the 40th sunrise spills its pale gold across the desert horizon, the natron salt mummification drying process has reached a moment of quiet culmination. The chamber no longer smells of moisture or living warmth. Instead, it holds the cool, dry scent of minerals, natron, cedar, myrrh, all blending into an atmosphere that feels almost weightless. For 40 days, the body has rested beneath natron, embraced by the mineral the same way dunes embrace the desert floor. And now, as the embalmers return, their footsteps are slower than ever, as if they know they are about to witness something sacred. The lamps burn low, their flames small but steady. A soft breath of wind slides through the upper window, carrying with it a whisper of sand. It sounds almost like the natron shifting beneath the linen, a soft hiss, a gentle reminder of the transformation hidden beneath. The embalmers gather around the bier. They pause. 40 days is not a small number to them. It represents cleansing, separation, transformation. It is the time needed for Natron to remove every drop of moisture, turning vulnerability into permanence. Slowly, they begin brushing the Natron aside. The sound is gentle, like thousands of tiny shells rolling across stone. Each handful they lift falls back into the basket with a soft whisper. The natron salt has darkened in places, evidence of the water it has drawn out. In other places, it remains pale and pristine, still shimmering under the flicker of lamplight. Layer by layer, the embalmers uncover the form beneath. The body is lighter now, astonishingly so. The natron has done its quiet work with the precision of time itself. The skin has tightened, turning smooth and firm, with a texture reminiscent of gently weathered leather. The limbs appear more defined. The features of the face, though still, remain clear, frozen not in fear, but in a serene neutrality, as if resting. There is no harshness, no violence, only stillness, only certainty. The embalmers lean closer, checking the areas around the hands, the feet, the joints. They speak only in murmurs. The natron has settled well. The drying is complete. The form is ready. Their words are less observations than more acknowledgments, quiet gratitude for the mineral that has preserved what time would otherwise erase. As the natron salt is lifted away from the torso, the embalmers reveal the cavity that once held the organs. The space is clean, dry, and prepared for the next stage of the mummification process. They run their hands through the remaining natron, feeling its grains slide like cool sand. Outside, the desert wind carries the same sound, a faint, flowing hiss, as if echoing the mineral's presence inside the chamber. For a moment, everything feels connected. The dunes, the natron, the body, the air itself. The natron salt mummification drying cycle has not simply preserved a human form, it has returned it to the rhythm of the desert. When the natron salt is fully removed, the embalmers gather it into clay jars. Some will be purified for use again. Some will be buried with the body. Some will be scattered into the desert wind, as if releasing the last breath of the drying ritual back to the sands that birthed the natron in the first place. The body is then brushed gently with soft cloths. The embalmers do not rush. They wipe away the fine dust left behind by the natron, revealing a form that feels both ancient and renewed. The room grows quieter still. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. The transformation is complete. The natron has pulled time itself out of the body, leaving behind a vessel ready for eternity. And as the embalmers step back, you can imagine the soft sound of natron being carried away in baskets, like grains of memory returning to silence. Tonight, as you listen, breathe slowly. Let the rhythm of natron salt mummification drying settle into your mind, a reminder that even the most profound transformations happen grain by grain, moment by moment, with gentleness, with patience, with quiet inevitability.
By the time the body has fully dried, and the air in the embalming chamber settles into a quiet stillness, the next sacred stage begins: the Egyptian linen wrapping burial ritual, a practice so gentle and deliberate that it feels less like a procedure and more like a whispered prayer woven into cloth. Tonight, we step into that moment where fabric becomes a bridge between mortality and eternity. The room is dim, lit only by small oil lamps that flicker like sleepy stars. Embalmers move with a slowness that feels almost dreamlike. In their hands, they hold linen, soft, pale, almost glowing in the warm light. If Natron belonged to the desert, these linen bandages belong to the realm of breath and memory. Before the wrapping starts, the embalmers pause to examine each strip of linen. Not all linen is the same, and here lies the unexpected truth about how the Egyptians chose the cloth for burial. The finest linen, reserved for temple rituals or royal ceremonies, was often used not on the living, but on the dead. They believed that if the body was a home for the soul, then its final garments should be worthy of a god. Linen was not just fabric, it was purity itself. Woven from flax that drank sunlight from the fields along the Nile, each thread carried warmth from the world the deceased once walked in. The linen strips rustle softly as they are unrolled, the sound like dried leaves brushing together, or the sleeve of a robe sliding against stone. That soft rustling becomes part of the rhythm of the space, weaving into the silence like a heartbeat. The embalmers begin with the fingers. They wrap each one slowly, carefully, as if tucking them in for a long sleep. The linen touches the skin with a quiet whisper, and the sound feels like it shifts the very air in the chamber. With each loop, each turn, the Egyptian linen wrapping burial ritual transforms the body, not hiding it, but honoring it, giving form to the dignity of the person who once lived within it. As the embalmers move up toward the hands, the linen sevels smoothly, layer upon layer, but there is more than cloth involved. With the first few wraps, the embalmers also place small amulets, tiny symbols of protection, each carrying a story older than writing itself. Some represent rebirth, some represent strength. Others are prayers cast into solid form. One amulet might depict the eye of Horus, watching over the body with quiet vigilance. Another might be the scarab beetle, symbolizing the rising sun and the promise of awakening. Each amulet is placed with intention, as if the embalmers were tucking secrets beneath the linen, secrets meant only for the journey beyond. The mythology behind each piece is woven invisibly into the ritual. To the Egyptians, wrapping was not merely covering, it was storytelling. Every strip of linen held the memory of a myth, a god, a prayer, or a hope. And as each strip is laid down, that story becomes part of the person it enfolds. Imagine the sound now. Linen brushing against skin, linen brushing against linen, linen catching faint currents of desert air. It is a sound that could lull even the most restless mind to sleep. The embalmers breathe slowly,
matching the rhythm of the ritual. In that quiet breath, the myths come alive. Perhaps they remember how Isis wrapped Osiris, restoring his form with her devotion. Perhaps they recall how the gods wrapped the stars in the fabric of night. Every movement echoes those ancient stories, making the Egyptian linen wrapping burial ritual an act of remembrance as much as preservation. The first layers are always the closest to the skin. These are the ones chosen with the most care, the most softness, the most purity. And as they tighten gently, the body begins to take on a new shape, not merely human, but sacred, prepared for the long journey ahead. Tonight, as you listen, you can imagine each strip being placed with deliberate calm. You can imagine the faint glow of the linen, and you can feel how even silence itself seems to bow to the ritual. This is only the beginning of the wrapping. The story is just starting to unfold, one soft layer at a time.
As the first layers settle smoothly against the skin and the scent of warm oil fills the chamber, the Egyptian linen wrapping burial ritual deepens into something even more intimate. The embalmers move with the same quiet rhythm, but their hands now carry not just linen bandages, they carry memory, mythology, and meaning. Each strip of linen is more than fabric. Every piece has lived a life. Some were woven for temple ceremonies. Some once belonged to priests. Some were garments worn only once during festivals honoring Osiris or Hathor. In the Egyptian world, linen was the language of purity, and wrapping the body in it was like writing a final poem across the skin, soft line after soft line. As one embalmer carefully unrolls another length of burial linen, you can hear it again, the gentle rustle, a sound like a sigh drawn from ancient reeds along the Nile. The lamps flicker, reflecting on the pale linen as though the fabric itself glowed from within. They begin wrapping the feet, slow, even, tender. With each circle, the linen hugs the form, reshaping it little by little. The embalmers whisper to one another, not in conversation, but in short, reverent phrases passed down through generations. Steady, smooth, let the linen breathe. Their whispers blend with the soft sound of linen brushing against itself, forming a harmony that feels older than time. As the linen wrapping moves upward, the embalmers begin placing more amulets, this time between the deeper layers of fabric. One amulet may bear the shape of Anubis, guardian of the dead. Another might be a tiny heart scarab, meant to remind the soul of its truth when it stands before the scales of judgment. Each amulet is placed exactly where tradition says it should be, but also where intuition guides the hands. The Egyptians believed that amulets did not just protect, they spoke. They whispered to the gods. They guided the soul. They steadied the spirit. And all of these whispers became sealed beneath the linen bandages, woven into the burial linen like secret blessings. The wrapping continues across the legs, then the knees, then the thighs. Layer upon layer,
The cloth begins to feel almost like the shell of a cocoon, not a prison, but a transformation. The myth of Osiris lives quietly within these motions. In the oldest stories, when Osiris was dismembered and scattered across the land, Isis gathered the pieces, held them close, and wrapped him in linen to restore his form. Tonight, in this chamber, that myth breathes again, not with drama or urgency, but with the same soft determination the goddess once carried. The embalmers do not rush. Every fold is aligned, every bandage pressed with the gentlest of touches. You can imagine how the linen feels, cool at first, then warmer as it settles into the natural heat of the room. The air grows dense with stillness. Outside, a faint breeze carries dust across the stones. Inside, the only sound is the steady rustle of fabric. And through that sound, the story continues. The linen itself becomes a narrator. One strip might carry the memory of a harvest season. Another might carry the scent of lotus oil from a long-forgotten ceremony. The fabric is not dead, it remembers. And as it wraps the body, those memories fold into the person who will carry them into eternity. The embalmers gently lift the arms now, sliding linen underneath, wrapping them slowly, crossing layers for protection. They pause at the wrists, placing a final amulet, a small jed pillar, symbol of stability, the backbone of Osiris himself. With the jed in place, the arms are eased back against the body. The linen tightens slightly, forming a protective cradle. As they continue wrapping up toward the shoulders, you can imagine the soft blow of lamp oil dancing on the fabric. You can imagine the quiet pride of the embalmers. And you can feel the shift in the chamber as the ritual nears its midpoint. Still slow, still peaceful, but carrying the steady momentum of transformation. The linen wrapping is no longer just preparation for burial. It has become an act of devotion, a conversation with eternity, and the story, like the linen, continues to unfold.
By the time the wrapping reaches the chest and shoulders, the Egyptian linen wrapping burial ritual enters its most delicate and symbolic phase. The embalmers slow down even further, not because they are tired, but because these final layers carry the weight of eternity. Each linen bandage is touched with oil, warmed by the hands applying it, and smoothed into place with an attention so gentle that it feels like the body is being prepared not for death, but for a long, peaceful dreaming. The embalmers now prepare the longest strips of burial linen, wide, soft, and woven tightly enough to last centuries. These are the layers that will define the silhouette of the mummy, the layers that will hold the amulets and prayers beneath them like a sealed conversation between soul and eternity. As the linen bandages are lifted, you can hear the softest sound, a whisper of fabric sliding through fingers. It is calm, rhythmic, steady, a sound that could lull the Nile itself to sleep. They begin crossing the linen over the chest, creating a pattern that resembles the binding of ancient scrolls. The Egyptians believed that the chest was the seat of memory and identity, so when the linen wrapped over it,
The ritual was not merely physical, it was an act of safeguarding the stories of a lifetime. Before the next layer goes on, one embalmer reaches for a small, delicate amulet shaped like a feather, the feather of Ma'at, symbol of truth. This feather would remind the soul of the single most important moment it would face, the weighing of the heart. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul would be granted passage into the field of reeds, a paradise of endless peace. The amulet is placed gently onto the chest, and the linen folds over it like a soft embrace. The wrapping continues up toward the neck. The embalmers lift the head slightly, sliding linen beneath, then smoothing it upward along the jawline, the cheeks, the temples. The sound of cloth gliding over the face is so delicate it could almost be mistaken for a sigh. The face is not fully covered yet. That step belongs to the very end. For now, the linen creates a frame around the features, a frame of quiet reverence. As more layers are wound around the torso, the embalmers begin adding resin between some of the bands. Warm, sticky, fragrant resin that binds the layers together, ensuring the linen wrapping will remain intact for thousands of years. The room fills with its scent, sweet, earthy, ancient. Outside, wind drifts across the sand, and the faint rustle seems to echo the sound of linen within the chamber. It is as though the desert itself is listening. When the final long bandage is unrolled, something shifts in the air. The embalmers do not speak. They simply begin wrapping the body from shoulders downward in one continuous spiral, a motion smooth enough to resemble a slow dance. The linen tightens gently, giving the body its iconic shape, elongated, serene, timeless. And then comes the moment the Egyptians considered one of the most sacred, the placing of the shroud layer, the outermost linen that would protect every memory, every prayer, every symbol beneath it. This shroud was often the finest linen of all, sometimes embroidered with faint red or blue markings representing the goddess Isis spreading her wings across the body. The embalmers lift it with both hands as though it were something alive. When it touches the body, the room grows still as the deepest hour of the night. They wrap it slowly, letting its weight settle into place like a soft veil resting on the quiet of the world. As the last fold is smoothed down, the embalmers rest their hands over the linen, closing the ritual not with words, but with silence. A silence that feels like a blessing. The Egyptian linen wrapping burial ritual has reached its final breath. The body is no longer just a body, it is a vessel of myth, memory, and hope, wrapped not only in fabric, but in stories that will outlive empires. And as you listen tonight, let the rhythm of the linen wrapping slow your breath. Let each imagined fold bring you closer to sleep. For this is the moment when the mortal becomes eternal, gently, softly, one layer at a time.
Tonight, as the lamps burn low and the desert outside begins to cool beneath the sky filled with drifting starlight, we step gently into one of the most fascinating contrasts of ancient Egypt, the difference between Pharaoh mummification versus common people. It is not a difference of worth, nor of soul, but a difference of resources, rituals, and the long ceremonial dance between royalty and eternity. So take a deep breath, let the world soften around you, and imagine yourself walking through the halls of a palace where even the air seems to shimmer with gold. The sound you hear first is soft Egyptian court music, harps, flutes, the low hum of sistrums echoing through the columns. The palace is quiet, but not empty. Servants move in measured silence. Priests glide like shadows in white linen. The air smells of lotus, incense, and the faint sweetness of myrrh. This is where a pharaoh's journey toward the afterlife begins, not in darkness, but in radiance. Pharaoh mummification is a ritual of grandeur. The moment a pharaoh takes his final breath, the palace becomes a temple. Sacred texts are whispered. Guardians are summoned. Special embalmers, few in number, trained for generations, are brought into secret chambers beneath the palace floors. These chambers are lined with carved walls depicting Ra, Osiris, and the endless cycle of rebirth. Every surface glows with firelight. Every corner carries the weight of tradition. But for common people, the beginning of the mummification process is far simpler. A modest home, a quiet courtyard, the scent of fresh earth instead of incense. Their families gather not in vast halls, but beside oil lamps flickering in gentle breeze. Yet both beginnings, royal and humble, share one truth. Every journey to eternity starts with love, remembrance, and the hope that the soul will live on. As you walk deeper into the palace in your imagination, the floor beneath your feet becomes marble, softened by thousands of footsteps. The walls rise high above you, painted with blue that mimics the heavens. Priests begin chanting slowly, their voices rising and falling like waves. This chant is for the pharaoh alone, a sonic bridge guiding his Ka, his life force, toward the realm of the gods. For common people, the chant may be a single prayer whispered by someone they loved, quiet, trembling, honest. In the palace, the pharaoh's body is laid upon a stone table carved with hieroglyphs that trace the story of the cosmos. The table itself is considered sacred. The tools used are blessed. The oils are imported from distant lands. Cedar from Lebanon, resin from Punt, lotus from the Nile marshes. The linen prepared for the pharaoh is the finest Egypt can offer, often woven specifically for this purpose. Every thread is inspected, every fold is perfected. But for common people, linen may be simpler, still pure, still meaningful, but lacking the intricate weaving reserved for kings. Their oils might be local, their rituals humbler, yet the tenderness remains the same. In both paths, hands move gently. In both paths, breath slows. And in both paths, the body is treated not as something falling away, but as something being prepared. The pharaoh's ceremony, however, includes steps unknown to most. At special moments, priests recite spells from the Book of Coming Forth by Day, ensuring the pharaoh knows the names of the gates he must pass in the afterlife.
Gold amulets in shapes of cobras, ankh, and falcons are placed across the body. For common people, amulets may be clay, stone, or sometimes none at all. But the love placed into each gesture, that remains equal. And as the soft court music continues, imagine yourself standing at the edge of the Pharaoh's chamber. The flames flicker. Shadows dance along the walls. You feel small but calm, not overwhelmed but enveloped, held gently by the sense that every soul, king or commoner, must eventually walk a path woven with the same questions. What remains of us? What follows after? What does it mean to be remembered? Tonight, as this chapter begins, we follow both paths, the golden and the simple, side by side, seeing not which is greater, but how each one reflects the heart of the people who prepared them. For eternity, after all, belongs to everyone.
As you continue down the imagined hallway of the royal palace, the air thickens with incense and low chanting, marking the beginning of ceremonies that only a handful of people in the entire kingdom would ever witness. This is the inner chamber, the heart of Pharaoh mummification, a place where the boundary between the physical world and the divine becomes thin as silk. In Pharaoh mummification versus common people, this is where the clearest contrast unfolds. Here, priests wear leopard skin cloaks, symbolizing their role as intermediaries between gods and mortals. Their movements are flawless, as though rehearsed across generations. In their hands, they carry sacred tools, obsidian knives, golden spatulas, carved vessels filled with rare oils. When they speak, it is not in conversation, but in sacred recitation, verses from the pyramid texts, ancient spells that were once spoken only for kings. The music shifts into soft palace rhythms, slow drum beats, gentle pluckings of harps, and the shimmering tremble of sistrums echoing through polished stone. It is a sound that seems to rise from the walls themselves. Now imagine stepping away from the palace and into the life of a common person. Their preparation takes place in a small room behind their home, lit by a single lamp. The tools are simple. The chants are whispered by family, not priests. The oils might be modest, sourced from the local market. There are no leopard skin cloaks, no golden instruments, no chorus of trained voices. Yet the air is heavy with love. The hands preparing the body are the hands that held it in life. A daughter lifts her mother's arm with trembling care. A brother smooths cloth over the forehead with the kind of gentleness that royalty, for all its grandeur, could never replicate. Even without luxury, common people burial rituals hold a quiet power, a power born of intimacy rather than ceremony. Meanwhile, in the palace, the pharaoh's body is tended to as though it were the body of a god. Each step is slow and filled with precision. Priests dip linen into warm oils, letting the fragrance fill the chamber. Lotus, cinnamon, cedar. They believe these scents help guide the pharaoh's spirit through the gates of the afterlife. More elaborate spells are recited, ensuring protection against serpents, shadows, and the trials of the Duat, the realm of the dead. For common people, the spells might be absent entirely. Instead, a simple prayer may be spoken. May your journey be peaceful. And in a way, those 5 words carry a weight that no elaborate text could replace. The pharaoh's organs, stored in canopic jars, crafted by master artisans, are placed in chests decorated with gold and lapis lazuli. For ordinary people, the jars might be simple clay, undecorated. Some families could not afford separate jars at all, leaving only the heart inside the body, believing it to be the seat of the soul. The contrast is striking, yet both choices reflect deep belief, one painted in gold, the other in simplicity. As the ritual continues, the pharaoh's chamber grows brighter with torchlight. Gold reflects on every surface: the headdress, the carved masks, the ceremonial jewelry resting nearby. Even the tools seem to glow. The atmosphere is not sorrowful, it is majestic, like a coronation for a world beyond this one. In a small home, a different glow fills the room, the light of an oil flame reflecting in tearful eyes. A family member adjusts the linen one last time, making sure it rests smoothly. A quiet moment follows, a moment where grief softens into acceptance. And then, silence. A silence soft enough to fall asleep into. For this is the heart of Pharaoh mummification versus common people. Grandeur versus tenderness. Ritual precision versus intimate touch. 2 paths shaped differently, yet both leading toward the same horizon. Tonight, as you drift deeper into this story, let the contrast soothe rather than divide. Let it remind you that every life, royal or humble, ends with the same longing: to be remembered, to be guided, to be at peace.
As the rituals continue, the contrast between pharaoh mummification versus common people grows more vivid, yet also more poetic. For in the end, despite the gold, the chants, the rare oils, and the finely woven linen reserved for kings, there is an undeniable truth resting beneath every gesture. All bodies, royal or humble, are preparing for the same horizon. But tonight, let's stay just a little longer inside the palace, where soft court music echoes among pillars carved with lotus blossoms. Priests circle the pharaoh's body, holding incense burners shaped like falcons. Smoke rises slowly, curling upward in delicate spirals, as though the air itself is learning how to pray. They recite the opening of the mouth ritual, a ceremony that would never be performed for common people. This ancient rite is believed to restore the senses to the dead, allowing the pharaoh's soul to see, breathe, speak, and eat again in the afterlife. A small golden az is touched to the lips, the eyes, the ears, a gentle tapping, a ceremonial awakening. Beneath the golden glow, it seems almost as though the pharaoh might inhale at any moment. Meanwhile, far from the palace, in a home where the walls are made of mud brick instead of limestone, a family sits quietly around their loved one. There are no chants, no golden as, just the steady sound of breathing. A whole room trying to breathe in unison, holding on to the presence of someone who has already stepped past the threshold. A child may rest their head beside the wrapped body, A parent might hold the hand wrapped in simple linen, tracing the shape of the fingers as though trying to memorize them forever. And here in this small house, the silence carries just as much weight as the royal ceremony. In both rooms, grief hangs in the air like a soft veil. And in both rooms, love guides every movement. Back in the palace, the Pharaoh's sarcophagus awaits, a masterpiece of stone, carved with protective spells and lined with gold. The walls around it are painted with scenes of the afterlife, boats sailing through the night sky, gods extending their hands, stars arranged like ancient memories. The sarcophagus is not just a coffin. It is a map, a portal, a promise. But for common people, the burial place is simpler. A wooden coffin, or sometimes only a mat made of woven reeds. And yet, when the body is laid down, the effect is strangely similar. The room softens. The air stills. Time pauses. The world becomes a little smaller, a little quieter, as though making space for the journey that is about to begin. The pharaoh's mummy is lifted carefully by many hands. The linen glows under the lamplight, and the amulets hidden beneath whisper their silent prayers. Step by step, the priests carry the body toward the sarcophagus. Their shadows trail behind them like slow-moving companions. In the home of a common family, the moment is more modest, but no less profound. 2 or 3 people, family members, neighbors, work together to lift the body. They move slowly, not out of ritual obligation, but out of reverence. Their hands tremble with tenderness. Their breaths are unsteady, but their devotion is absolute. And here is where the 2 paths, royal and humble, finally begin to merge. Because when the bodies are laid down, each in their own resting place, something remarkable happens. Everything becomes quiet. Not palace quiet, not home quiet, but cosmic quiet. A quiet that feels as though the world has gently stepped aside to let another soul pass through. In this quiet, the pharaoh and the laborer, the noble and the farmer, the scribe and the shepherd, all walk the same corridor toward the same destination. The Duat, the realm of the dead, does not have 2 entrances. There is only one. The soul of a king might be wrapped in gold, while the soul of a common person is wrapped in modest cloth. But once they cross the threshold, the wrappings fall away. Gold cannot make a soul shine brighter. Simplicity cannot dim it. All that remains is the heart, the truth weighed against the feather of Mot. And in that moment, every life is equal. As the priests close the lid of the sarcophagus and seals are placed along its edges, the palace grows silent once more. And in the small home, as the final prayer is whispered, the silence deepens too. 2 worlds, 2 rituals, 1 destination. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine these 2 paths finally touching, like 2 rivers meeting in the desert. Different sources, different journeys, but the same ending, the same release, the same peaceful embrace of eternity. And with that image in your mind, let yourself rest. Slowly, deeply, quietly. For even stories must sleep.
As the chamber grows quiet and the embalmers step back from their work, a new layer of the story begins to shimmer beneath the surface. It is the story of the guardians, those who watch over the body, the organs, and the fragile line between life and the afterlife. And tonight, in this soft space between wakefulness and rest, we step into the ancient mystery of the 4 sons of Horus, the divine protectors whose presence fills every canopic jar and every whisper of the mummification ritual. Take a slow breath. Let the world loosen its grip, and imagine the flicker of a single oil lamp illuminating a carved table where 4 small statues rest, each shaped like a god. These are not merely containers. They are guardians. They are voices. They are the embodiment of Horus himself, dispersed into 4 forms, each carrying a piece of the sky, a piece of the Nile, a piece of the spirit that moves within every living being. The Egyptians believed that Horus, the falcon-headed god, son of Osiris, did not protect the dead alone. He divided his power so that the organs of the deceased, placed carefully in canopic jars, would be watched over by divine eyes. Tonight, in this soft space between wakefulness and rest, those eyes open slowly. The first son of Horus is Imseti, the guardian with a human head, the protector of the liver. His presence is gentle, warm, and steady. Imseti is the embodiment of compassion, standing close to the heart, even though he guards the liver. In Egyptian belief, the liver was the seat of emotion and memory, and Imseti ensured that neither bitterness nor sorrow followed the soul into the next world. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear his breath, slow, reassuring, like a quiet hum beneath the sands. The second son of Horus is Hapi, the baboon-headed protector of the lungs. His name means the one who embraces, and his role is to safeguard every breath the deceased ever took. When the embalmers placed the lungs inside his canopic jar, they whispered prayers, asking Hapi to keep the winds of chaos away. Hapi is the guardian who calms storms, who softens winds, who tucks the soul beneath layers of peace. Tonight, in this still silence, his presence feels like a cool breeze drifting across stone. The third son of Horus is Duamutef, the jackal-headed protector of the stomach. His form is sharp, alert, and powerful. The jackal to the Egyptians was not a symbol of fear, but of devotion. They observed jackals guarding their territories at night, wandering cemeteries with unwavering loyalty. Duamutef inherited that devotion. He guards the nourishment of the body, the food once eaten, the strength once gathered. In the afterlife, he ensures that the soul never hungers, never weakens, never loses its ability to stand tall before the gods. And the fourth son of Horus is Qebehsenuuf, the falcon-headed guardian of the intestines, who brings coolness, clarity, and protection. His name means he who refreshes his brothers, and his role is to keep corruption and impurity at bay. Qebehsenuuf is the sharp sight of Horus himself, watching over the most vulnerable parts of the body, ensuring nothing disturbs the eternity ahead. The four sons of Horus are always shown together, never alone, because their power exists in balance, the way the four directions steady a compass, or the four winds hold desert in place. Each canopic jar, carved carefully from alabaster or painted pottery, was more than a container for organs. It was a small temple, a whispered prayer, a promise. And in the soft glow of the embalming chamber, these four guardians form a circle around the soul of the deceased, silent, patient, eternal. Their presence is like four slow bells ringing across the sands, not loud, not urgent, but steady enough to guide even the most weary spirit. Tonight, as you drift deeper into this story, feel that circle of protection settling gently around you. The sons of Horus are not here to frighten. They are here to soothe, to guard, to remind you that even in death, one is never alone. And with every breath you take, their ancient rhythm echoes softly. Four guardians, four directions, four quiet voices guiding the way toward rest.
There is a legend whispered in the temple halls of ancient Egypt, a gentle, quiet tale, rarely told in the loud daylight, but often shared in the stillness of night. It is said that long before the four sons of Horus became guardians of canopic jars, they were simply four spirits wandering the edges of the world, searching for purpose. And tonight, as you sink deeper into this soft cocoon of calm, I'll tell you how Horus called them into the sacred circle of protection. Imagine for a moment the desert sky at dusk. The horizon glows with a fading gold, and the first stars begin to blink awake. Horus, the falcon god, whose wings spanned sky and fate, looked down upon a world trembling with fear of the afterlife. Souls wandered helplessly, unsure which direction to take. Some clung to memories, others drifted without guidance. Horus watched with a tenderness hidden beneath his fierce exterior. And so, one night, quiet, cool, wrapped in moonlight, he summoned four young spirits to his side. They were not gods yet. They were simply children of the wind and sand, standing uncertainly beneath his shadow. The first spirit, who would become Imseti, carried warmth in his eyes, an ancient kindness, the kind that soothes grief. The second spirit, later known as Hapi, had a gentle innocence, as if he remembered every breeze the Nile had ever breathed. The third, Duamutef, stood with alert stillness, like a guardian who had been waiting for a duty he couldn't name. And the fourth, Senuef, carried the sharp spark of curiosity, the desire to watch, to learn, to protect. Horus saw in them not just potential, but balance. "The dead do not need fear," Horus said softly. So softly the stars themselves leaned closer. "They need companions. They need guardians who walk beside them." And with those words, Horus divided his divine essence into 4 parts, gifting a fragment of protection to each of them. The transformation was gentle, like a slow ripple across the night. Imseti received the warmth of compassion, and his human-headed form emerged like a quiet sunrise. Hapi received the cool breath of the wind, and the baboon-headed protector awoke with a soft shimmer. Duamutef received strength and vigilance, and the jackal-headed figure bowed with solemn purpose. Senuef received clarity and watchfulness, and the falcon-headed guardian spread invisible wings. The 4 sons of Horus were born, not in thunder, not in flame, but in stillness. And it was in that stillness that Horus entrusted them with the sacred organs placed in canopic jars, telling them, "You will protect what once sustained life, and in doing so, you will protect the journey toward eternity." Imseti took the liver, not because of its physical importance, but because it held memory and emotion, the tender parts of a life lived. Hapi guarded the lungs, the breath that carried every laugh, every sigh, every whispered wish. Duamutef kept the stomach safe, defending the strength once gathered from the world. And Senuef protected the intestines, ensuring purity, clarity, and balance. But their guardianship was more than just a task. It was a companionship. Each soul entering the embalming chamber was greeted not by silence, but by 4 quiet presences standing beside them. The Egyptians believed the 4 sons of Horus did not simply guard organs inside canopic jars. They walked with the dead, step by step, until the moment of rebirth. And even now, as you listen, you can imagine them surrounding you, not frightening, not looming, but comforting, like 4 lanterns glowing in the desert night. Imseti stands beside your memories. Hapi breathes with your breath. Duamutef guards your strength. Senuef clears your path. Their ancient rhythm, passed down for thousands of years, settles softly into your thoughts, guiding you toward rest. Tonight, in the warmth of this story, you are wrapped in the same protection the pharaohs once received. 4 guardians, 4 sons of Horus, watching quietly over your journey into sleep.
As the embalmers finished their final prayers and the canopic jars were placed beside the sarcophagus, the Egyptians believed something quiet, something unseen began to awaken. The journey through the Duat, the shadowed realm of the afterlife, was about to begin. And while many feared that realm of winding tunnels, silent waters, and watching spirits, the Egyptians believed no soul walked it alone. The 4 sons of Horus walked with them, not as towering gods, not as warriors with blazing weapons, but as soft lights, as patient guides, as protectors, shaped by love rather than fear. Tonight, as you drift closer to sleep, imagine the sarcophagus lid sliding shut with a gentle thud, soft, final, peaceful.
Darkness surrounds the body, but not the soul, because in that darkness, 4 faint glimmers appear. Imseti is the first to step forward. His human face glows like warm dusk, steady and reassuring. In the Duat, he carries the memories of the deceased, not the painful ones, but the gentle ones. The sound of a mother's voice, the warmth of friends' laughter, the quiet satisfaction after a long day of work. Imseti lifts these memories like lanterns, illuminating the soul's path. Hapi walks on the left side. His baboon-like presence radiates calm, and every breath the soul takes becomes easier, lighter. In the living world, he protected the lungs through the Canopic jar. In the Duat, he protects the breath of courage. Whenever the soul hesitates, Hapi sends a breeze, soft, cool, encouraging one more step. Duamutef, the jackal-headed guardian, walks slightly ahead. His senses are sharper than any creature of the desert. In the world of the living, he protected the stomach. In the world of shadows, he protects strength itself. Jackals were watchers of the night, and so Duamutef ensures no lurking spirit, no whisper of doubt comes close to the traveler under his guard. And Kebesinuf, falcon-headed and bright-eyed, walks at the rear. He protects the final organ, the intestines, associated with purification and clarity. In the Duat, Kebesinuf clears illusions, wiping away illusions like sand brushed off stone. If the soul wanders too close to confusion, he spreads a cooling aura, returning clarity like moonlight returning through clouds. Together, the 4 sons of Horus create a circle around the soul, front, back, left, and right. The Egyptians believed that just as the Canopic jars protected the organs, the guardians protected the very essence of the traveler. And eventually, after passing through silent canals and shadowed gates, they would reach the most sacred chamber, the Hall of Ma'at. Here waited the great scale, the balance upon which the heart of the deceased would be weighed against the feather of truth. Many trembled at this moment. Even in stories whispered to children, the Hall of Ma'at was described as endless and echoing, with statues of gods watching from the shadows. But tonight, as we tell this story in a softer light, imagine the hall not as a place of fear, but as a place of stillness, a chamber where time moves like honey, where even the torches flicker slowly. The soul stands before the scale, holding its breath. And it is here in the quietest moment, that the 4 sons of Horus step closer. Imseti places a hand on the soul's shoulder, reminding it of every act of kindness it ever performed. Hapi lifts the cool winds, helping the heart rest gently. Duamutef stands guard, ensuring no dark force disturbs the weighing. Kebesinuf brings clarity, ensuring the soul sees itself truthfully. The Egyptians believed that although the gods judged the heart, the 4 sons of Horus protected the soul from fear. They were not advocates. They did not interfere with the truth, but they ensured that the traveler faced judgment with calm, like someone standing before a mirror they are finally ready to see. And if the heart was light enough, if it balanced the feather of Ma'at, the soul would be allowed to continue toward eternal fields, guided gently by the 4 sons of Horus until dawn rose on the far edge of the afterlife. And if the heart was heavy, even then the guardians stayed, not to interfere, but to offer dignity even in the final end. For the Egyptians believed that protection was not only for the righteous, protection was an act of compassion that every traveler deserved. Tonight, As you lie here drifting in your own soft journey, imagine the four guardians drawing near, not to judge, not to test you, but to ease your breath, soften your thoughts, and wrap your night in ancient, quiet protection. The sons of Horus never leave a traveler alone, and that includes you.
So, the journey through the Duat was never meant to be rushed. The Egyptians believed that eternity reveals itself only to those who walk slowly, breathe deeply, and listen to the silence between each heartbeat. So tonight, as the fire crackles softly beside you, and the faint sound of rain begins to gather in the distance, imagine yourself standing at the edge of the final gate, your footsteps echoing on ancient stone, your soul surrounded by a calm older than kingdoms. After 105 minutes of drifting through the shadows of ancient Egypt, you have reached the threshold where the night becomes something else, something quieter, something eternal. The soul of the deceased, wrapped carefully, protected lovingly, and guided by the four sons of Horus, now approaches the last passage. Behind them lie the twisting canals of the Duat, the shimmering lakes of memory, and the silent corridors watched by spirits who never sleep. And before them, a horizon, not bright, not dark, just endless, like the space between two breaths. In this final chapter, the Egyptians believed the afterlife journey, the Egyptian afterlife journey eternal, begins not with dramatic revelation, but with a gentle unfolding, like a lotus opening its petals before sunrise. The soul steps forward, and the air changes. It becomes warmer, not with heat, but with recognition, like a homecoming. For the first time since leaving the world of the living, the soul feels the presence of those who came before, ancestors, guardians, forgotten friends, voices woven into the fabric of eternity. Their presence does not speak in words, it speaks in warmth, in familiarity, in a soft gravitational pull, as if the universe is welcoming the soul not as a guest, but as a returning thread in its tapestry. And as the soul continues forward, the world around them begins to shift. The sands fade into fields, vast, golden, infinite. The Egyptians called this place the Field of Reeds, a mirror of the world they once knew but perfected. Here the Nile never dries. Here no storm ruins the harvest. Here the nights are cool, the days gentle, and the horizon stretches like a promise. The Egyptian afterlife journey was never a place of passive rest. It was a continuation, a chance to live again, to work again, to love again, but without pain, without fear, without the shadows that once troubled the heart. The soul kneels to touch the earth. It feels familiar, real, grounded. And as they stand again, they notice something new. The four sons of Horus are still with them, but their forms are softer now, fading like silhouettes in morning mist. They have done what they were created to do.
Imseti releases the final memory he guarded, a small glowing sphere that drifts upward like a spark. Hapi bows gently before dissolving into the breeze. Duamutef places his hand on the soul's back, offering one last gesture of strength. And Kebes-en-Wef, falcon-eyed and serene, spreads an invisible shimmer of clarity before stepping into the light. Their departure is not sad, it is gentle, honoring, a reminder that protection walks beside us only as long as we need it. And now, the soul stands alone, but not lonely. The Egyptians believed that the end of the 70-day mummification process was not an ending, but a beginning, a doorway to a life freed from time. Imagine the sound of the fireplace beside you, a low crackle, steady and warm. Imagine rain tapping gently against the window, soft, rhythmic, cleansing. In that sound, in that warmth, in that rhythm, picture the soul taking its first full breath in eternity. No weight, no sorrow, just expansion. Like stepping into a room made of quiet light. You, listening now, are sharing that moment, feeling its stillness, feeling its peace. The journey through the Duat is not far from your own journey into sleep, a slow surrender, a gentle release, a trust fall into the soft unknown. And here, at the threshold of eternity, the night holds you the same way it held the pharaohs, gently, patiently, endlessly.
In the field of reeds, the Egyptians believed time softened. It didn't disappear and it didn't freeze. It simply learned to move differently, more gently, more patiently, the way rain falls when you're already asleep, or the way a warm ember glows long after the fire should have faded. Tonight, as the soft patter of imagined rain gathers behind your thoughts, imagine the soul taking its first slow steps across this perfect landscape of eternity. The reeds sway like music. The Nile glimmers like polished obsidian. Every breeze feels like a memory returning home. This was the heart of the Egyptian afterlife journey eternal. Not reward, not punishment, but equilibrium. A sacred balance where the soul could finally breathe without fear. As the soul walks deeper into these golden fields, they begin to notice something remarkable. The world is familiar, but not identical. It is as though the best parts of life were preserved and distilled into something clearer, simpler, more peaceful. The house they once lived in appears in the distance, not as it was, weathered by years, but as it existed in its most joyful moment. A small courtyard, a clay oven, a fig tree that never stops bearing fruit. And standing at the doorway, figures. Some known, some half-remembered, some whose faces were nearly erased by time but now return with astonishing clarity. The Egyptian texts describe this moment not as a reunion, but as an alignment, when the soul re-enters its larger family of eternity. No tears, no shock, just recognition, like stepping into a warm room where everyone has been waiting. They embrace without words, They smile without speaking, and all the anxieties of the Duat, the gates, the tests, the shadows, fade like mist touched by sunlight. In that stillness, the soul begins to understand something profound. The afterlife was never meant to be an escape from life, but a reflection of it. A mirror polished clean, a second chance to live with the wisdom earned from the first journey. And here, in this ancient dream of eternity, every action is gentle, every intention pure, every step unhurried. As the soul sits beneath the fig tree, they notice the 4 sons of Horus lingering at the edge of the field, not fully gone, but watching with quiet satisfaction. Their duty is complete, yet their presence remains like a soft memory of guidance, reminding the soul that even divine protectors know when to let go. The Egyptians believed this release, this gentle withdrawal, was a lesson for the living. Protection is sacred, yes, but so is freedom. And so the soul rises once more, walking through the fields that ripple like woven gold, each step guided now not by fear or guardians, but by an inner stillness. And here, as night gathers around you, we pause to reflect on a truth the ancients understood well. Eternity isn't something that begins after death. It begins in the moments we learn to slow down, in the breaths we take with intention, in the quiet victories, the kindnesses no one saw, the forgivenesses no one noticed, the patience we offered even when tired. Those moments, small and fragile, are the seeds of eternity planted in the soil of a single lifetime. And tonight, as the fire crackles beside you and the soft hum of rain wraps around your mind, you too are walking that eternal field. Each breath you draw is a reed swaying. Each thought that softens is a ripple across the Nile. You are not rushing, you are not striving, you are resting. Inside a story older than dynasties, older than pyramids, older than memory itself. A story where the journey and the destination are the same quiet place, a home made of light, patience, and endless calm.
As the soul continues across the golden field of reeds, something gentle begins to shift, not in the world around them, but within. The Egyptians believed that eternity wasn't simply a place, but a state of awareness, a quiet unfolding of truth that grows the longer one walks through peaceful landscapes. And tonight, under the soft patter of rain against your imaginary window and the low glow of a fireplace warming the edges of your thoughts, the soul reaches a moment the ancients called the settling. It is the instant when the journey, long and winding, finally wraps itself around the traveler like a soft cloak. The soul sits again, this time near a riverbank that glimmers with impossible stillness. The Nile here is not the Nile of the living world. It is the Nile as it exists in myth. Calm, glass-like, reflecting not just the sky, but the memories of every life long past. The reeds sway slowly, the air tastes warm, and the soul begins to feel something they have not felt since the beginning of this long journey through the Duat: rest. true, unburdened rest. A rest that comes not from exhaustion, but from arrival. The Egyptian afterlife journey, eternal, was never meant to end in a grand ceremony. Instead, it dissolved quietly into a realization. The soul had become part of the landscape. They were no longer a traveler moving through eternity, but a presence woven into it. A note in the music, a light in the horizon, a whisper in the reeds. And as you listen now, drifting deeper into your own quiet, imagine that this ancient soul looks up at the sky one last time and breathes. A long, slow human breath, the kind that precedes sleep, the kind that follows peace. In the soft distance, the 4 sons of Horus fade into warmth, leaving behind the echo of their protection. Their watch is over, their task complete. And the soul understands what the living so often forget, that nothing in the afterlife is rushed, nothing is taken, everything is given gently, and only when one is ready. The Nile glows brighter for a moment as if bowing to the new resident of eternity. And then, slowly, the world around them becomes indistinguishable from the soul itself. There is no boundary, no separation, just presence, endless and calm. And this is the moment, dear listener, that mirrors your own descent into sleep. You have walked through stories, through shadows, through history softened by time. You have followed the soul through the Duat, past guardians, gates, and silent corridors. And now, like them, you've reached a still point, a place where your thoughts loosen, your heartbeat softens, and your breath begins to fall into the slow rhythm of night. Imagine the rain falling more softly now, each drop a small blessing. Imagine the fire dimming, its warmth settling into your chest. And in this gentle space between story and sleep, we whisper the same words that the priests once whispered over the resting forms of the departed. May your heart be light, may your path be clear, may your rest be eternal. And now, listener of the night, we reach our own ending, a soft, warm ending, a human ending. And so we have completed the 70-day journey together. You've walked every step, from the preparation of the body to the cleansing, the canopic jars, the guardians, the judgment, and finally, the field of reeds. What began as a story from ancient Egypt has now become a gentle weightlessness inside your mind, a softness, a quiet glow. Tonight, as you drift into your own rest, know that the ancients believed something beautiful. Every night's sleep is a small rehearsal for peace. And tonight, peace is close. Close enough to touch, close enough to breathe in, close enough to become.